Hi everyone. So the season's in its final throes, and we're in the penultimate meaning double game week of the season, where brutal binaries of owning and not owning yet again dictate fortunes. It's a week of something ultimates, actually. We reach the penultimate game week of the season next weekend, and also in this, the anti-penultimate WGTA of this campaign, as things start to wind down. And thought starts to turn to not having a double game week every bloody weekend to contend with as you reach the season's ultimate climax come in. Oh, sounds like bliss, doesn't it? Anyway, apologies. We're back a day later this week. A mixture of childcare needs and spousal birthdays meant we thought we'd just put it back to the Tuesday, which was also allowed the Liverpool game to occur, and my mood to slightly brighten after, well, Brighton on Sunday. I'm back this week with Lucy as per. You all right?
Well, relegation was finally confirmed for Saints, so I've had better weekends, it has to be said. It was all on FPL to cheer me up about football, and as I didn't own Wilson, that plan didn't get off to a particularly good start. But I'm sure we'll find some positives somewhere. We are Who Got the Assist. You can find Tom on the main account at WGTA_FPL, and you can find me, Lucy, at Lucy Hynett with two T's. On the pod today, we'll discuss double game week 37, including our key thoughts and players, pending the news on Rashford's injury. We'll talk about full popcorn mode with things perhaps formulaic again, with the key targets identified for double game week 37. Should we just enter full popcorn mode, whatever that means? And looping back to last week, we'll talk about our end of season goals. What goals are we and you still focusing on with so little of the season left? And what might you do differently if you're pivoting between them? As Tom said, we're recording on the evening of Tuesday, the 16th of May, with Brighton and Newcastle still to play.
Oh, excellent. Let's just quickly do a couple of interim bits of housekeeping. The first thing is mini league update very quickly. I'm just going to mention that basically the top four. It's absolutely crazy at the moment. Just 9 points separate the top four and just 28 points separate the top 10. So it's literally anyone's league right now. Coming up from, sorry, falling down from seventh to 10th. It's haven't Jota, Clue, Peter Stead. 70 points this week for Peter. In ninth, up from 15th, it's Mark James Exeter, please. I don't think he's been in the top 10 before. So well done, Mark. Bashed your way up from 15th. In seventh, up the way from 10th, it's Sean Allen, 80 points for Sean this week. In seventh, up from ninth, joint seventh from Sean, that would be then FPL Edison, 31. In sixth, up from eighth, it's Jan Vakonja with NK Sintagraba. And fifth up from sixth, Zishan Bimani, 82 points. And the top four have not moved. In fourth is Mikdal Nesvik at 84 points with being alone at FC. In third, it's the former leader, Mark Bleakley, 4-2 next to his team is now. Used to be the semi-enders, I think. 76 points for Mark. And second is Josiah very dazed in 75 points this week. And up top, it is Blaze Pakosdi. The guy messaged me and excused me for mangling his name to keep up the good work. So, yeah, very kind of you. Well done, Blaze. Just 3 points, though, ahead of Josiah and just 5 points ahead of Mark. So, really going to be quite thrilling as we get towards the end of the season. And also the market forces this week. Unsurprising, we've still got another game to go on Thursday, so we need to see how that goes. But Ilkay Gundogan, kind of interest. He's done load of points. 213,000 transfers in for Gundo at the time of recording. The main four guys being Rashford and Martinelli. 280,000 sales for Martinelli for Rashford, sorry, and 150,000 for Martinelli. I think Martinelli's season, we're not sure where that is at the moment. Rashford, no idea what's going on with his injuries. We'll discuss in a bit. So that kind of makes sense, I guess, if people are jumping early. Elsewhere, you've got the likes of Shaw, Fernandez being brought in. Over 100,000 managers have brought those guys in, and Estupinian, 75,000 managers brought him in off the back of his 17-pointer, I think it was. And Eze as well, 80,000 managers have brought him in, just in great form, effectively. Sold to make up the difference, the likes of March, Tony, and Grealish. Right, mid-game week, got one more game to go. But Lucy, how have you got on?
Well, I'm just going to get my rant out of the way because I need to. Wilson, right? God, spent the last pod saying Wilson is quite a good pick if you can get to him. Yes, get to him. What did neither of us do? Buy him. And the worst bit about that haul, and it wasn't just that Leeds seemed compelled to give away stupid penalties, but the fine margin involved with Wilson just about to be subbed,
Mm.
and then that penalty happens. And presumably, Isak would have deputised if Wilson had been subbed before it was given. which would have justified all of the hunches about Isak's better minutes and how that might lead to more points.
Yes.
But there we go. That's FPL for you. Well done to anyone that bought him. I know there was quite a lot of captainers around there. If you did buy him, I think a lot of people were tempted to captain him. So well done to those people. I'm not in the bit bitter, as you can tell. Anyway, apart from that, David Raya continues to be an absolute hero, coming off my bench with a 7-pointer, and Watkins auto subbed in for Rashford, which could have been a lot worse. And then, of course, I have the Estepinian 17-pointer, which I think you'll be grateful if I don't talk about too much. So that leaves me on 78 points going into the second half of the double game week, which is a point above my required safety score, meaning I'm on a very small green arrow, basically in large part due to Salah and Trent last night. I was on a red until then. So it's not going well. It's not going terribly. And it's all going to depend on whether Wilson fancies doing the same again or not, really. How about you?
Not as well, unfortunately. I didn't have Wilson, and I also didn't have Estepinian, which those two together, not owning them, has been a bit crap. I'm down from 13k to 18k, so it's not too terrible, but still undoubtedly a little bit annoying. After kind of a small green arrow last week, I was hoping that it'd be the end of the rot, but hey, it's just not quite happened. I'm still loving the irony that this week was billed as the biggest bench headache of all, and it's turned out that the benches were very much needed. So I
You
did
went
two.
too deep, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So I didn't have KDB and didn't have Rashford. So it got Dunk 6-pointer with whatever he gets on against Newcastle and Rico Henry 6, both coming off the bench. Obviously, last week was fairly effusive that Pep would play KDB, so I'm now sheepishly accepting bench points. But hey, there we go. I think when he didn't start, I thought, okay, Rico Henry, it's time to step up, and step up he did. I did 2 transfers this week. I did Isak in for Slanky as build, and then as mentioned on the pod last week, I did De Gea in for Raya just to head off some of the min league angst, which come on to in just a bit. However, obviously that's actually led me down 1 point, I think. So hey, there we
Oh.
go. So I've got Dunk, Matoma, McAllister, Trippier, Botman is our captain left to play. But yeah, overall it wasn't great. No opinion, no Wilson, and the returns I got: Trent, Salah, Isaac, Haaland, Dunk, and De Gea were either returns everyone got, or in the case of Dunk and De Gea, matched or better by competitors such as S2, Shaw, and Raya, if you look at the transfer I made. So it was one of those again where I tweeted before the game week, just looking at the EOs, that it was yet another week where most of us own the same players, and I got a bit of stick for it. But I mean, it's just one of those, isn't it? Where it's definitely annoying, and then it just feels like how the last few weeks have gone, that the one player that I don't own seems to have gone off, or in this case, 2 players I don't own seems to have gone off and really gone off to such a punishing extent. So it will be a fairly big green arrow this week, I think. But sorry, fairly big red arrow. Wishful thinking, but we shall see. Cool. Right. Well, the first thing to do is just mention that you're going to be follow in the footsteps of every other single bloody co-host I've had, and bugger off at the end of the season, aren't you?
Yeah, but you shouldn't take it personally because it's quitting the entire game, not just the pod.
So, what's the deal? Tell the people who aren't on Twitter what's going on.
Okay, well, as you know, and probably a lot of people I discuss FPL with, I have been mulling this over for a little while, just because I haven't really enjoyed the game for, I would say, a fair few months. Maybe not. I'm not sure how much I've enjoyed it for the whole season, to be honest, but it's definitely kind of got worse as the season's progressed. And this week, as I considered Saints' fate, I thought I'd probably just make the commitment now that I don't think I'll be playing, or I won't be playing next season. I have no idea if it'll kind of sort of change my psychology for the final weeks. But as I mentioned earlier podcasts, I think some of the issues that I'm struggling with are peculiar to this season. So especially around soft pricing and the fixture scheduling as a result of all those double game weeks. But I think there are some trends that seem fairly permanent, and I don't know how healthy those trends are for the enjoyment of like long-term engaged players. I think we're talking continually about EO and the force of the herd and people copying content all the time. I think those trends are only going to become more strong. And I think there have been a number of really good players that have struggled this season, not because they lack ability, but basically because they've got bad luck, and the herd is pretty powerful now. So yeah, that combined with the fact that I now have got the misery of my team no longer playing in the league, so I think my focus will naturally shift away from the Premier League and more towards Championship football. I've kind of said fairly consistently that for me, FPL is the secondary interest that comes from my love of football, and I just don't think I'll be spending as much time watching Premier League football. So yeah, I think that's pretty much where I've come to. Initially, definitely not playing next season, and then I'll just see how I feel about it after that, I think.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. So the HP Weaver said that we'd be having a leaving do for Lucy at the end of the season after her FPL retirement announcement. Been a great pod double blacks, thank you both. And Under Corella asks, is Lucy really retiring from FPL? How long for? What could change her mind? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it feels like the Southampton first sort of thought process is what's a bit of an undercurrent to this, and I think maybe that naturally would mean, as you say, you don't watch that much Premier League football, and it would just be you'd be playing FPL sort of piecemeal, and it doesn't feel like that's quite like the sort of person you are in terms of this sort of thing. Like you would be able to just kind of play a little bit, like you want to be all in, or you want to just kind of not have any part of it at all. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people said to me, "Oh, Lucy, just if you're not enjoying it that much, why don't you just play a bit more casually and just sort of, spend half an hour on a Friday?" And I just can't do that. Like, if you can play casually, I think that's the best way to go from now on, because I think the game is moving in such a way that it probably doesn't need that much of your time. So if you can do that, go for it. But as you just said, I'm a bit of a kind of all or nothing kind of character, so I can't really do that, and I just don't think it's particularly worthwhile. So yeah, I'd rather just not bother. Um, yeah, as I said, I don't know if it will change. If Southampton were lucky enough to be promoted, would I think differently? Don't know. Are Southampton going to be promoted again? I very much doubt it. So yeah, I'll see how it goes. But yeah, I feel very kind of disillusioned, I guess. So
Yeah.
there didn't seem much point in carrying on.
No, fair play. I mean, the FPL Focal did say today that there's apparently some big changes afoot, which may kind of rekindle my interest a bit, because I've kind of tracked you a little bit. I'm not sure it's just kind of contagious cynicism. I certainly have felt that this season's been more of a trudge than others, even though this season I'm doing well compared to other seasons where I've been kind of, I'm looking for the next big thing to kind of catapult me up the ranks and chase and chase and chase. And maybe it's losing the thread of the chase, but also it has been all those factors we've spoken about. I know I do. It depends what they do over the summer, really, and I think that might kind of, for long-term engaged players. I mean, yes, you're obviously stepping back. For someone like me who's kind of feeling a bit disengaged with this season, but hoping that it's kind of the peculiarities of the season that are forcing that. I'm just hoping that if they do kind of make some changes, they're going to be changes which basically encourage choice and kind of
Mm.
make that choice viable.
I was
But
thinking about that, but I don't know what they could change to force choice, because I think you're exactly right that it's the lack of choice that's made it so kind of trudgy and boring and a bit of a grind.
mm,
But I don't know really what they could do within the kind of general confines of the existing game, because I think it's unrealistic to expect they'll change it that significantly that it kind of changes the
no.
broad mechanics of the game, because they're so into people being engaged, and the more complex you make it, the less accessible it is.
I know. I mean, things like, for example, I looked at a few of the answers to that thread, and things like, changing captaincy mid-game week. I don't think that sort of thing is what they're going to go for. That's a very Sky sort of thing. Remember when we were playing the fantasy Bundesliga before the Premier League restarted? Like, it was literally like that. You could make subs, change your captain and stuff at the start of every literal game during the game week. So you could be a ridiculously active manager, but I think that goes against that sort of casual, as you say, mention that inclusive sort of ethos that the Premier League go for. I think there are a couple of things they could do. Like I've mentioned these in the past. The first thing with the chips, I think what could be interesting is if they had like maybe this is something that would be too complex for people, so they probably wouldn't do it, but like a chip menu rather than just having like four chips that everyone's got. So you have like say five or six chips that could possibly be used, but you can use three of them, say, during the season. So it's up to you which ones you use at which time. A friend of the pod, Mitchell Sterling, suggested to me earlier, a mulligan chip, for example, could be an extra chip that could be in the kind of on the menu that you could potentially use, where you can make a change or two kind of to your team post deadline. So you rescue a massive haul off your bench or something like that. And that could be something that would be quite interesting. So you have triple captain, bench boost, free hit plus a few others. It's up to you when you use them, but you can only use 3 of them, and that's it. That could be a really interesting way of changing the game up a little bit. And the other thing is something I've written about again in the past, which is expanding that bonus system to reward all kinds of players. So I think that could create a really interesting scenario for managers. So if for example, in midfield, there's more midfielders who just are completely irrelevant to the game than anyone else, just because there are more midfielders in the game, for one, and two, they're just loads of midfielders who don't do any points really, apart from appearance. But what if, for example, a defensive midfielder or a midfielder who plays in the middle but doesn't really kind of contribute much to in terms of the end product, but just keeps the team going over, it takes the tempo, was rewarded, or in the mix to be rewarded with bonus every week. So you had a defensive midfielder who cost 5. A classic example would be a Kante, but you know what I mean, who averaged, say, 3 or 4 points per game week, versus a midfielder getting attacking returns. So maybe there'll be a choice that a manager can make there between those two, between the ceiling and the floor being higher. That could again be a little tweak they could make, which could probably make things a little bit better. But there are a few things they can do. Pricing isn't their fault this year. I think we do have to let them off a little bit, apart from Rashford potentially. We do have to let them off. But I think next year, hopefully, pricing will again force choice. But it depends if they're going to be bold or cowardly when it comes to the likes of Haaland's price, to see if it again forces choice. I very much doubt it, but we shall see. We shall see. Hopefully, if things do change a lot, I think that may reignite my enthusiasm for this game. Obviously, with Lucy leaving, I'm still going to stay for a couple more episodes until the end of the season, I hope. But,
no, I'm running away straight right now. Bye.
Bye. I mean, obviously, what the pod looks like next year, I'm not sure yet. I haven't really had time to think about it, to be honest. Obviously, things have changed a lot for me personally, with a little baby to parent, and trying to fit in family, work, and the pod is definitely more of a challenge than it ever was before. I'm afraid FPL now comes a distant third to the other two. So I'll do some thinking over the next few weeks and about what I do and what the future looks like, basically. But hey, there we go. Just thought we'd let you know. Right, so shall we move away from this and move back to FPL and double game week 37, the home straight, Lucy. We're on the home straight now. What's your sitch with this? I guess we're obviously awaiting sort of Rashford news, but
Yeah.
I mean, we've got, is it United, City, Brighton, and who cares about Chelsea? Let's just ignore that. We're not going to go into that.
Yeah.
So I mean, those 3 teams are in it. I mean, what's your situation with that? How are you set up?
I'm a bit of a disaster, actually. Trying to put a positive gloss on it, but I can't. So after I sold Bruno a few weeks ago because he was injured, but he wasn't actually injured, he's kind of my priority transfer to get back in. At the moment, I literally only have Rashford from United. That's clearly not enough. The unfortunate thing about this is that I am probably looking at all the kind of avenues I've got. I'm probably going to have to let go of Trent to fund it, which I really don't want to do. But it's either sell Trent or sell Salah, and at the moment I think I'm more scared of Salah than I am of Trent. Maybe that'll change. Maybe it was Salah. Basically, one of the Liverpool guys needs to go. I would like to have just got rid of Watkins and just downgraded him, but the thing is, if I do that, I just kill his spot rather than enhancing his spot. Whereas I can sell Trent for someone like Shaw, who I'm also exposed to, and kind of do the double hit, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
I'm not feeling particularly comfortable about any of my kind of avenues. I am slightly wondering if I would benefit from Rashford being out, because it would push Bruno Rashford owners to do something with Rashford while I could do Rashford to Bruno. So I kind of would gain a bit of ground a bit. But yeah, I'm not in an ideal situation. I have got Grealish, but I haven't got anyone from the City defence, and I'm now in a situation where I don't know whether Grealish will play many minutes, and I don't know who from the City defence will play many minutes. I think City in general now have, because of unfortunately Arsenal's collapse for the title, are going to be in a position where they win the league a little bit earlier than we expected, and I think that's going to bring more rotation than we perhaps expected for this game week 38. So that's unfortunate, and that makes me a bit confused about who to buy from City. I haven't ruled out buying Ederson. So yeah, I couldn't actually be. I mean, I've got the triple Brighton, but I assume basically everyone has.
Yeah.
I couldn't be pretty much worse set than I am right now. if I'm honest. So
Yeah,
feeling chipper.
feeling great as usual. It's been the theme of the last few weeks. I'm in a fairly similar position. I've got De Gea, so I've got kind of the Man United defense cover settled. I've got KDB limping on in my team. I'm hoping he plays against Chelsea or Brighton. So again, you've probably got a single game week there, and I've got my trouble with Brighton. That's pretty much it, apart from Haaland. So I'm in a similar sort of situation where I think I'm going to have to, especially because I've only got one free transfer now. I think I'm going to have to try to be happy with one United, one or two, if Rashford's fit, three United, but if not, just two United, and be happy with two City players. Like, I just don't think that defense is going to be. I wouldn't want to overexpose myself to the pet roulette, basically. But it's interesting what you're saying about selling Trent, Sam FPL Pricey, a fellow despondent saint. He asked, "How are you both feeling about holding or even buying Liverpool assets due to the lack of a double?" And to be honest, if Rashford is fit, my route to Bruno, who I think probably is going to be the big miss if I can't get there. I've got another kind of alternative to Rashford, who I've mentioned in a bit. But my route to get to Bruno is to sell Salah and then basically sell KDB to Salah in 38. So kind of just do a bit of a hokey pokey to make that sort of work. But I mean, Bruno's numbers, we know he's basically like a bit of a ketchup bottle about to explode really in those different ways. And I just think, I feel like he's probably the one to be looking at just because Bournemouth and Chelsea, good double, no bones about it. I mean, I'd ideally like that. I did like three United players for it, one defensive and two attacking. It's just whether I want to take the hit and whether I want to. It depends on what I think my mini league rival is going to do as well, which again we'll kind of get into in a bit. So like Sakindran Puvandran also said, with Rashford and Martinelli, he's got. Would you be looking at a hit this week? And it does feel like for some people it might be worth, as you said last week, kind of slightly reorienting your team, just hoping you get that payoff in 1 week, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to loop back to Sam's question, I would, in an ideal world, like to keep Liverpool, but I think lots of people are going to be in our situation where Liverpool are the kind of obvious sells, just because you have so much money wrapped up in them. For buying, I don't think they're a priority this week if you aren't already on them. But I think, as you said, Southampton in 38 is a pretty good opportunity. So maybe if you don't have them this week, you have them next week. As a regards hits, I'm not really against them. I think high ceiling double game week is a justifiable, but you should, and I know you should assess each hit on its own merits. But I think looking at a lot of scenarios, a lot of people are considering City midfielders, and I think that's where you get into slightly shaky territory when it comes to kind of considering hits because they're a massive lottery. And I don't know whether your psychology is you buy two tickets and hope that that puts you in a better chance of getting a return out of it, or you just hold back. But I would be slightly wary, as much as if you hit these City players correctly, they could be
Mm.
massive. I think they could also backfire on you, and you could end up with like a 20 minutes each game and wonder what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, as someone holding KDB and maybe potentially, I don't know if you get there from Grealish, but I mean, KDB to Bruno, if I put that into review, that's what it tells me to do. And if I became convinced that KDB wouldn't play for one, and if he gets injured tomorrow, for example, then it becomes a bit obvious, then maybe I could find myself doing that and kind of doing something else with Rashford if he does tend to turn out to be out, or kind
Yeah,
of,
if Rashford's fit, I'm probably selling Grealish to buy Bruno.
yeah, exactly. And you because you get two definite starts from Bruno versus only
Yeah,
one for KDB.
and you're not even just getting definite starts off Bruno, are you? Getting almost 90 minutes each time because he's just running to the ground all the time.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, he's not really gone off yet, but the ceiling is definitely there. He's the
Yeah, no,
second
definitely.
best for non-pen XGI over the last six. So it could definitely happen. And there's even a case to, as we've kind of both implied, like sell that City player to get Bruno in. I mean, I saw a thread by Alex on Twitter. I mentioned him earlier a couple of pods ago. He said that Chelsea game for City is going to be a biggie. But what's even bigger is that Arsenal versus Forest game, because if we lose that game, the title's already gone. So
Yeah, so they can rotate.
they're champions. So it doesn't really matter. All hell basically breaks loose there, and it becomes a total crapshoot. And we won't know the Arsenal result obviously until after the deadline. So it buying a City player this week all bets are off really in terms of the predictions, and it is a blind crapshoot effectively. We're looking at maybe 120 minutes if you're lucky from any of your players. So you're
Mm.
simply just kind of closing your eyes and kind of trying to pin the tail on the donkey, aren't you? Really, with the City
Yeah.
players, yeah. It just doesn't scream good play. But then I guess if you do come out of it with having bought Foden or bought Gundogan and you've kind of walked away with a 19 pointer, then you're going to proclaim that you're a genius. But it's one
Yeah,
week.
I'm fairly confident one of them will haul. I just don't know how you work out which one it is, and that's the problem with it. So it just really depends on your appetite for risk, I think, around that. And I think the flip side is that the Man United options, Bruno, Rashford, etc., they are so much more nailed because we know that Man United are pushing for that Champions League place, so they've still got a lot to fight for. So
I mean,
it's
I don't.
two
Sorry, go ahead.
times. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say the only kind of problem I've got is if I don't want to take a hit. I've got Rashford and I've got 0.3 million in the bank, so I can't get straight to Bruno from Rashford. So I mean, regrettably, I've only got one kind of play there, which is Anthony. Obviously not an
I love how you said
invest.
that, sort of embarrassed.
I
You're like, oh,
know.
Anthony, oh.
Obviously not an investment, more of a 1 week wonder if Rashford's not fit. He's the only player I can get to. The data is actually oddly there because if you watch him play, he's incredibly wasteful, so it creates loads of data. He's the third best XGI amongst United players this season, and then over the last 6 game weeks, he's top for non-pin XGI amongst midfielders costing under 8.5, and fourth amongst midfielders over the last six.
If
It's
you
also
filter enough, you'll find the
I
data, won't
know,
you?
I know. I'm just kind of preempting what a load of threads will say. Differential, differential. Second for attempts on goal over the last six, and second for shots in the box as well over the last six. So it's basically a volume play. If he takes enough shots, he may well score some points. Is basically what you do. But you're likely to probably
I guess he's
start
got the
both games.
fixtures. He's
Like to
got the
start both
fixtures
games.
to get a lot of shots off as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean that's literally what I do if Rashford's out because and if I don't really because selling Salah to buy Salah back seems a bit odd. Or even though
It does.
I'm
It does make sense though, doesn't it?
it does, but at Anfield's that surely is a recipe for disaster.
Well, yeah, maybe.
But I guess it really depends. It's one of those where all bets are off in some ways, and the gloves are off in terms of making weird moves at this point.
Yeah,
Like
that is true.
if you end up like with someone like Anthony in game week 37, that's okay. If you end up with him in game week 25, that's not okay because you're kind of
Gonna hold
you
him.
bought a problem. But if you buy a problem and the season's over next week, then cool, fine,
Actually,
whatever.
actually, if you thought Anthony was mad, I was looking at. I think one of the questions is, a free hit team. I was looking at what FPL review liked for a free hit team, and Sancho actually came up. So if you thought
Oh.
Anthony was wild, that's a whole new level of wild.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. That was Kitan's chopper question. Can you discuss a free hit team, please? What would you have? Yeah, I mean, it's certainly quite an interesting team you put together. It really depends on like your cash in the bank, effectively. I think.
Mm.
I don't know. De Gea in goal, Trent, Shaw, and Estepinian at the back, and then kind of five in midfield: Bruno, Matoma, uh, McAllister, Rashford slash Anthony, a City mid of some description. No, maybe not. Maybe you sack it off and maybe go for Salah there, and then Haaland and Alvarez up front because you'd assume that Alvarez probably plays one in that weird number 8 role he seems to be playing right now, despite being a number 9 for Argentina. Um, so you wouldn't be too excited by that, but there's something along those lines. Maybe I don't know. It's a weird time to be free hitting.
It is, and it also depends on that Rashford news because I had Edison in goal so that you could get Shaw, Bruno, and Rashford in outfield. But yeah, it was broadly the same line: the Shaw, Estepinian, Trent, Bruno, potentially Rashford, Brighton, a City punt of some kind. It's very difficult to pin down who the right City attacker is apart from Haaland. Alvarez is probably the best. I said in previous weeks that I think Alvarez kind of has his risk priced into him, so he doesn't restrict your options elsewhere. So if you want to use him for this 1 week, you're not tied to him for 38. There are worse options. I just think you need to just take a punt there and kind of make peace with the fact it might backfire horribly, and you could end up with 2 20-minute appearances.
Yeah, certainly. I just don't know. I mean, outside of the doubles, it really does feel like proper kind of crapshoot territory, doesn't it? As well, like you're not at this time of year. Like, even though we always say, "Oh yeah, it's just kind of that the FPL glasses are on," you're not going to be there buying a Pedro Porro for a dead rubber Spurs versus Brentford or something like that. I mean, it's very much kind of your free hit would still be kind of based around kind of optimizing the template. I think I don't think there'll be that many sort of hits in not hits, but that many punts in there really. Like you wouldn't be buying a Ben Rama or something and hope that West Ham and Leeds becomes a goal fest. That's just not. You know, it's something that you wouldn't do, I guess, if you're an engaged player at this time. So yeah, a free hit around that, what we've kind of both mentioned, this sounds about right. And captaincy, Haaland, right? I mean, just it's difficult to you can't really overthink it, can you?
No,
Sadly,
I
no.
think someone asked, didn't they, if there was any kind of Zag captaincy picks.
Yeah, it's Neil Gupsey. Yeah,
If you really are pushing, I would go for Bruno, but I just don't see why you would bother. That's a bit depressing, but I just think this is not the week to Zag because I think
I
Haaland
mean,
will
it
start
depends
though.
it depends where you are though. Like, so if you're 300, 400k, like, what's the point in captaining Haaland? I can
Well, yeah,
understand exactly.
well, so you're just
Like,
hoping that
well,
luck goes.
because you're either 300k, you're either your season ends 300k or 500k, and if you're kind of if you've been classically finishing around the 100k top 100k and you're kind of down in the doldrums, then it doesn't matter whether you finish 300 or 500, it's still a bad season, right? So maybe you would captain a Bruno and hope things go stratospheric. Maybe
Would it be Bruno
even
for you as your alternative?
I don't know. Maybe even like well, it depends how Brighton are looking, but maybe even a Matoma or a McAllister because you've got the Southampton game, which is a home game, and then you've got the City game again at home, which could be massively rotated City. I mean, that could requisite
Yeah,
a decent output. You
yeah,
never know.
McAllister on penalties as well.
Yeah, yeah, that might be all right. And or you go over Bruno, or I don't know. I think that you're really pissing into the wind, really, if you're captaining a City midfielder, aren't you? I mean,
Yeah,
that's really going Hail Mary.
yeah.
There you go, there you go. And you plan for 38 yet? Your final week playing FPL. Are you going to buy James Ward-Prowse and captain him? You surely.
No, I've got to stay true to my principles, and also I just don't think there's much point. I haven't actually got a plan for 38 yet. I'm going to see how 37 comes out, but it partly depends on that Rashford news as to what direction I go in. So I'm going to hold fire on that one. I think I'm possibly looking at Arsenal assets just because I feel like I've missed out on them for a little while, so I might go back there. But I haven't really decided yet.
We're home versus Wolves, aren't we, that day?
Yeah.
Yeah, potentially, potentially. I mean, I'll look at the numbers for final days next week, but I always prefer the home teams on the final day. It's just something about it, and there's this kind of innate randomness about game week 1, game week 38. There's always something about those two game weeks which is always a bit crazy. So, hey, we shall see probably next week, and it is a week to go mad. So, Southampton's last home game in the Premier League, James Ward-Prowse, 2 free kicks. That's what's going to happen, Lucy.
We've had more managers than home wins. That's a good stat for you there.
Well, yeah, me. Don't have to sell us on that one. Right. Okay.
Oh,
Yes. Let's
nice.
let's talk about a couple of pieces of curio while we're here. Just to kind of yeah, talk about other random stuff, I suppose. Because hey, credits people who are spending 2 hours talking about double game week 37, but you're in the wrong place
We
if
haven't got
that's
it
what
in
you
us, have
want.
we?
No, we don't. Let's talk about full popcorn mode though,
Stop
because
it. It's become full popcorn mode has become like your favorite phrase
I
of
just
the season.
I just love it. Like it's the beauty of watching everyone else go mad over something. When you don't have to worry about it, it's great. Like if you can keep your head while others around you are losing theirs, and you can be a woman, my daughter. Like it's very like that. It's
The
brilliant.
amount of popcorn gifts you sent me over the year.
But it's like I don't know. Do you want to just explain kind of what this is, even though we've both kind of spoken about it a little
I
bit?
feel like you should explain, given it's your like catchphrase.
Well, you're the one who came up with it.
Did I?
I think so. Yeah, if you look at
Really?
popcorn, yeah, yeah. So it's
Well,
basically
so basically, it's been quite common over the course of the season for people to slightly lose their heads, particularly over double game weeks. And I think this is probably intensified because we've had just so many double game weeks this season. And you see over various bits of content, mostly tweets, but also I've seen a few podcasts running into it as well. That people basically just go mad for double game weeks. They panic a little bit about what they do and don't have, and then talk themselves into oblivion about -8s and -12 and how they might cover every single possible avenue. And Tom and I have made a little bit of a sport out of watching this madness unfold without actually doing anything about it because we're too boring. I think that's about right.
yeah. No, it's brilliant. It's just watching, as I said, everyone lose their minds about something which weeks which just don't deserve minds to be lost over. You know, I mean, maybe the last couple of weeks I should have been a bit more mind loosey.
Yeah, in hindsight, we missed a few opportunities.
Maybe, but I mean, we did say, didn't we, that these are weeks where you kind of the fixtures did stand up for that kind of scrutiny or that sort of level of that sort of level of mania. But stuff like double game week 29, when you saw people taking -12s for mediocre set of fixtures just because it was a double, I just found that to be hilarious, basically. And then it's kind of, I guess, the hype of everything that goes with FPL these days, FPL content these days. That kind of, so I said, it just makes you feel like you're kind of sat on the sidelines, eating popcorn, just watching loads of people go mad, which
And it's
certainly,
actually crazy how an idea kind of gains momentum in the Twitter sphere. So you go from one guy saying, I'm going to take this -8 for this player, and people being kind of slightly jovial about it. And then it sort of seizes kind of
yeah, it
attention. And
takes on
people
life of
just,
its own,
yeah,
doesn't
it
it?
takes a life of its own. And you see more and more people doing it. And you think, have I missed something? And I think that's what's quite difficult about being a spectator is that you don't get sucked into it because you end up
Oh.
thinking, hang on, have I missed something here? Like, what's I'm just going to look at his data again. What's going on?
Yeah, have I missed something here? No, I haven't. I think there's just definitely an element of hysteria about this. And all it tends to take is one individual, like one influencer, to say, I'm doing this. And then you'll kind of slowly over the next kind of couple of hours see other people kind of, either posting their teams that they've done this particular move or saying, oh, I'm really considering this now. And you're like, oh, really? It's a fascinating sort of ethnographic petri dish of society, I guess, as you see one idea sort of germinate and catch fire. I just love popcorn mode. It's great, and sometimes as well, it can kind of be quite good if you're kind of, I guess, not sure on what you're going to be doing too. You can kind of skin it the other way and kind of let everyone else freak out, and then kind of go full casual effectively, and just take the consequence or take the conclusion that everyone comes to after a long time of agonizing, like fully. So, and maybe I'll do that next year, like fully casualize myself across tranches of the season where we end up, if we end up with another kind of quite formulaic one like this, just fully casualize myself, enter a zen mode where I'm just like, okay, obviously I'll do, if I'm doing the podcast, I'll do that. I'll just do it and say it, but all the complex stuff, let other people work that out and then make the same decisions other people do, and just kind of, there's sitting back and laughing at everyone else. There's also the element that's kind of just going with the flow and
Kind of
eating
leaning into
popcorn,
it. Yeah.
while watching out how you and everyone else kind of goes and letting everyone else go mad. Or you're kind of like, oh well, I mean, whatever. We'll go with the flow and see what happens after this.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I've complained about the influence of content creation and how we're all kind of following a template, it has had advantages at points of the season where, for example, when those crazy FA Cup results happened and it threw the chip strategy into disarray, I did get to the point where I was like, well, you know what? I'll just let people look at these fixtures in more detail than I can be bothered to, and then I'll just do whatever they've decided is the best idea. And I think sometimes just leaning into it is the best way of kind of conserving energy and just
Yeah.
learning to enjoy the rest of life.
I know it's very against sort of where this pod started, but I feel like the
I know, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said
no,
that.
but it's true though. It's like the proliferation of content has kind of made things feel incredibly saturated, like to the nth degree now, where it's just like you don't need that depth to for me to tell you that buying McAllister for March was probably the best option. You didn't need to have a 2 hour discussion of all the other options out there. and go and deep dive into Willock versus McAllister. It's kind of like, really? I mean, yeah, I mean, it is one of those things, isn't it? And it may be kind of this notion of popcorn mode is quite an interesting one, just because next season, for example, thinking about me and Mr. Estepinian, and that really annoyed me because I think it's not because I was ever considering buying him. It's because obviously I was one of the earliest people to own him. I got all those
And you
points from
sold
him,
him.
sold him, and didn't buy him back because I was kind of I think it was kind of I think it was overthinking a little bit and kind of feeling like I didn't want to ape the template and not buy him in, and really sort of getting into that sort of headspace when really I could have entered this sort of popcorn mode and just gone, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to go that way and, you know, go with the flow and see what happens, good or bad. And it helps maybe this kind of notions just kind of step back and not be kind of get caught up in your own head, I guess, and overthink these sort of little moves, which, yeah, okay, it is fairly uninteresting to do what everyone else is doing, but equally, it's not uninteresting to be losing out loads of points and getting a red arrow. So I think that's the trade-off we've all been sort of going through a little bit this year. I mean, obviously we both had good starts, and our teams have basically been the same. I don't know whether we started this, whether it's just been how it's been, but we've our teams have basically been the same the majority of the season, apart from one or two players. Um, and I don't know. I don't think there'll ever be another season like this. I really don't. But I mean, maybe it could be. I know it's probably too late for you, but if you are kind of disenfranchised or a little bit disengaged this season, it might be quite a good thing to think about. Just popcorn mode. I'm just going to see what happens with everyone else and let them have the arguments, then make my own decision afterwards. Or I'm going to just let everyone have the arguments, see what the conclusion is, and see if I go along with it. But it might be quite good to kind of help if you're
The
just
self-preservation.
yeah, you just want to float along and disassociate yourself from the noise. It's just whether with less doubles next year, and if there are other changes, it's maybe as prevalent. But I don't know. I find that an interesting one, just to mention. It's just basically, as I said, one curio.
I
Yeah,
think it's a good idea though. And I think what you're saying in terms of I know you were frustrated by the whole Dunk versus Estepinian thing, but it's indicative of the way we've desperately tried to find ways to have like mini differentials. So
yeah,
you've got to cover a team, but you want to try and find a different way of covering it. And if Duncan had come and scored a bullet header, we'd have all thought it was an inspired idea. And I think also there was a little bit of doubt about whether Estepinian would
yeah,
start every
yeah.
game. So
I think it. Yeah,
oh,
I
it was
think it
just a
was
freak
just.
incident. No one expected a goal and assist off him, did they?
I know, but I mean, when I got him in, I was just saying, I was extolling the virtues of the fact the guy is like position resistant. He's
He
popped up
doesn't
all
really
over.
care, does he, where he
Yeah,
runs?
doesn't give a
Don't
crap.
blame
He's
him.
just in the middle. He's in the middle all the time,
Yeah.
And I knew that because I bought him before, and that's why I bought him before. And it was like my initial observation. I was like, oh, God's sake, when he scored, it's like this. I knew this could happen. Obviously, it's quite an extreme case when it happens in the 90+ minute against the team that I support, who used to be the league leaders. I mean, that's very sort of heightened emotion around that, but. Yeah, it's definitely a moment where I was like, "Whew, right, calm down. You've got a nice house, beautiful daughter, lovely partner. Your life is great. Don't get too annoyed about this stupid fantasy football game." you Very rare that I get annoyed about FPL, but hey, I think maybe it's something I'll think about next year. And maybe like little decisions like that. And maybe it is a case of just kind of remembering those principles, just defaulting to not defaulting to the herd as much, but if it's one where you don't need to differentiate, just don't.
Just
Like,
get the guy that scores the points rather than the guy
yeah,
that yeah.
yeah, get the guy who just does the points. Yeah, I know one of the guys is quite big and stuff, and he can chest down Anthony, but hey, there we go. Final thing this week is pivoting season goals. So with I don't know if I've mentioned, but Estepinian's done loads of points, and I didn't own him. But with not owning Estepinian, I think my pretend I mean 18k. It's not too far to top 10k, but I think I think that those are points I'm not going to make back because my team is far too template. And it's sometimes around this sort of time you think about kind of pivoting your season and kind of where you are, what you can actually feasibly do. I remember James from Planet. I don't know whether he was asked, if someone else was asked this. He was saying that someone was saying, "Oh, I'm kind of 100 points down in my mini league. What could I feasibly catch the guy I'm chasing?" But no, it's all over. Seriously, it's all over. And I think I feel like it's the case for me, potentially definitely the top 5K, probably the top 10K as well. I think I'm going to have to be kind of content to finish in the top 20 if I can make it. So I guess I'm kind of rethinking, Lucy, my final season goals. And I noted with best opinions, I was making myself feel better, and that both my mini leagues that I do care about, none of the top four owned best opinion, which is very nice. And it made me sort of think that maybe I changed my kind of strategy. And I'd really started doing this with De Gea last week, from macro to micro. So screw OR, don't worry about that as much. Think more about, think less about, I should say, what's the her going to do, and think more about what's my rival going to do in both those mini leagues. It made me sort of think a few things, like a different typology of players as well in the mini league kind of crossed my mind. Like, you've got your template player, your Lucy, who maybe doesn't follow the content creators, but she always kind of follows the template, has a pretty sort of straightforward team. You know what she's going to do week to week. She's going to just follow what everyone else kind of does. There's the one season wonder. So the manager who's having the season of their lives and everything's come off, and they've got random picks, random captains, they're doing well. And then you've got the Maverick, that unpredictable guy, takes big hits, doesn't follow the template and ignores EO. I just Anyone else in any league in sort of any leagues you're in that would be a different sort of typology of manager? I think that's kind of pretty much it, isn't it? Like your FPL
Yeah.
follower, I guess, could be one.
Yeah, I think what I've noticed in leagues that I'm playing in, I kind of play in a wide variety of different leagues, none particularly kind of high stakes, but some that are from kind of the Twitter community or kind of highly engaged managers that have kind of historically always done well, and some that are kind of like office leagues or friends leagues or more casual leagues, where I have noticed just how kind of prevalent particular moves and templates are in a way that they weren't before. Like, these players weren't playing to a particularly high strategy standard, and now we're suddenly doing that, which kind of indicates how widespread content consumption's become around FPL. So I'm finding a lot of more casual leagues a lot more challenging this year than I was in previous years, just because clearly people are watching YouTube or reading things in a way that they weren't before. So that's made my mini leagues a little bit more interesting, a little tighter. And to be honest, looking at some of their teams now, I'm like, well, you've probably played this better than I have. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about that too much. I think I'm still at a point where I'm trying to maximize overall rank. The cash league that I play in isn't particularly high stakes, and I don't play in many leagues which I really care about. There's no real kind of like bragging rights behind them. So I have done this intentionally because I don't really like the tension when you get to this point of the season. You go, ooh, should I be prioritizing rank or league? So I think I'm probably going to stick with that. Maybe that's been my mistake all along, because maybe mini league play keeps the game fresher. Um,
Yeah.
but given that everyone's engaged in content, maybe they're all becoming the same. Maybe mini leagues and overall ranks will just overlap to such a point now that it doesn't really matter.
Osmosized into one
Yeah.
homogenous blob. No, it's really interesting. I was out with the personal story, but I was out with the NCT dads. That's how cool I am on Saturday in the pub. Just before I got home for Eurovision, of course, to enjoy a
I
whole
love
evening.
Eurovision, so
I,
don't
I
stag Eurovision.
I love Eurovision as well,
Oh, okay.
seriously, because
Okay.
I'm a massive fan. Anyway, diversity, love, inclusion, all the things that I espouse. But I was out with the NCT dads, and obviously we mentioned that I did do a podcast and as well fantasy football, and it was just amazing. Like, I'm looking at everyone's teams, and they are all like so in template. Like, everyone, like, I was like, do you watch or listen to? And I never heard of you, never really heard of this. I've listened to the official. I listened to the official podcast, or there's this, I saw this Andy guy on Twitter that a friend recommended me. Like, it's very sort of like, very kind of upper stratosphere level of FPL, if that makes sense. Like, very sort of outer reaches of FPL, like the bigger names, the biggest names is what they've seen and heard, and they've got very sort of their understanding or engagement. I should probably say understanding is obviously good. Engagement is obviously quite light, but still massively template teams. And you can definitely see that kind of the prevalence of kind of, I guess, what a template player, one of those typologies of rivals I mentioned, in the mini leagues. And I've seen less of like that one season wonder sort of individual. Like in the
Yeah.
past, you always saw like there's always kind of a day from accounting. We'd be like, oh, yeah, I've had a massive week this week. I've captained the Chelsea, and he's scored a 15 point. He scored 15
Yeah, yeah.
points. Like
I had one
what?
of those. I had one of those in one of my leagues, and he lasted until the World Cup, and now he's just fallen off a cliff because he just once the double game weeks came in and the kind of
Yeah,
more
yeah,
advanced chip
gone.
strategies came in, they just die.
Gone. My cousin used to be like that as well. Just like he had one very, very good season, was leading me all the way through. And it was just like, well, I'd started using Fantasy Football Scout then, and it's been the glory days when there was actually an edge to being engaged and something like, right, I knew that there's a blank coming, so I made loads of points. I knew there was double coming, so I wildcarded into the double, and there's something like an 80-point lead became me leading by 10 points, something like that. So, but I think those
You
days are
just can't do
over.
that anymore, can you?
No,
But
you definitely can't.
just
But these maverick types are the worst, I think, if you're kind of trying to play FPL in a certain way, and that's kind of the way I seem to kind of adopted playing this year, and probably the way that you should be playing is what I've learned from you, Lucy, I guess. Um, but it's these sort of unpredictable types. So my main men league rival this week, he was quite a long way off because um I'm quite good from could make some at work. He was taking like a minus 16s, minus eights, like loads of things just to keep track of a template every week. Now he knows what he's doing. He's got an FPL kind of handle. I think he does some work for the scout as well. So he knows what he's doing, but he's quite a gambly sort of guy. Just has no interest in EO. Just doesn't give a shit. Takes massive hits. This week took a minus eight. Brought in Wilson. Brought in Estepinian, and he's gone from like 60 points behind me to like just kind of I think the gap's now 12. So I mean it's and
ouch.
next week he could take another hit for God knows what. So it's very much kind of like, do
And
you
you
kind of,
can't predict those players either, so you can't cover them. You don't know what he's going to do.
that's the thing. But I mean, maybe he's a United, so it's kind of you kind of start getting psychology, don't you? So you think, all right, so this guy's a United fan, so I'm assuming that he's gonna probably look at buying, maybe get Bruno. Is he gonna? Does he have Rashford? Yes, probably. Yeah, he does. So how is he going to do it? Sort of guy, right? He's going to go for triple sort of United attack rather than go for a defender, and probably take a minus eight on the way. Like, so it's kind of very much about, do you cover the move, the player, or do you kind of assume that by not taking the hit, you're sort of on the law of averages, which I term that I hate, like just letting the guy you letting them kind of make a noose for their own downfall. If that makes sense. Like it's, uh, I mean,
I don't know.
maybe it's a nice way of kind of ending the season, perhaps, to kind of have that end of season goal be something slightly different to where you are. But I mean, I guess for a lot of people now, it's kind of, there's the scope really isn't there, is there, to jump massively? In some
No.
ways, almost Wilson captaincy this week, maybe something we should give more credence to, was that sort of move was perhaps your last, not your last chance, but your last sort of pick up for a layer of certainty surrounding the player starting when Haaland wasn't going to be the main captain. Like maybe it was sort of the last chance saloon for a big
Oh
jump
dear.
in OR. Oh, I bet you're
Well, that
glad
was a
you're.
positive note to finish on.
I bet you're glad you're leaving now.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very happy. Right. Let's just reiterate quickly then. Transfers and captains this week. Obviously waiting on Rashford's. Any initial thoughts for you?
Well, obviously Haaland captain. Bruno in one way or another. It just depends whether Rashford's the one that goes or Grealish is the one that goes.
Okay.
That's basically it.
Okay. All right. I think Salah, it's going to be, if Rashford's fit, Salah out, Bruno in, and I buy Salah back in 38. If he is not fit, Rashford, then either I roll the dice on Anthony, or I take a -4 to buy Bruno. Yeah, I don't know, because that means I sell the only way I can do that is selling KDB or selling Trent. Like I just don't like either of those. So maybe I buy Anthony. I just don't know. And just hope that on the 1 week it would pay off. I really don't know. Like there's just no.
Just to clarify, you're hoping that Anthony covers Bruno.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Because there's no neat move that I can make if Rashford's out, rather than selling Kevin De Bruyne for Bruno, and then I need to do another move to either shore up the Rashford spot, or I play Botman at home versus Leicester, or I play Henry. I don't know who they're playing, so I'd have to do another move anyway. If that makes sense. So I'm kind of I need that Rashford
Mm.
spot to be taken by
They're away to
someone
Spurs,
else.
aren't they, Brentford?
Yeah, so that's probably not really what I want to be doing, even though I do think, yeah. So it's either going to be a reluctant hit, if that makes sense. Um, so if Rashford is out, then maybe, and maybe I kind of would have to console myself with the idea that KDB won't play both games. We don't know. We've got no idea. And then in game week 38, Brentford's already a difficult game. So Bruno probably outscores me over the next three games. So yeah, maybe I'll do that.
I like how you're just trying to get yourself there now. You start now, and then by Friday it'll feel painless.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't want to take another hit though. I'm a nice number. I'm a nice six. You know, that's it. I'm done. You know, so it's a
Okay.
nice round number. Right. Well, that's your lot. We'll be back for our penultimate pods of the season early next week. Obviously, looking at the last game week of the season. Sorry, we end up on a Tuesday, but them's the breaks in these different times for me, at least as a new dad.
Thanks for listening. We were Who Got the Assist. You can find Tom on Twitter at WGTA_FPL, and you can find me at Lucy Hynett with two T's. If you enjoyed listening to this, please like and subscribe to the podcast. For new listeners out there, if you think you'll be coming back, please hit that 5-star rating across platforms like iTunes and Spotify so more people can enjoy the pod.
So yeah, that's it for the anti-penultimate pods. I know those people be like, "Oh, stop using that phrase, man. It just makes you sound. You're trying to sound clever." I just love. You know, it's a good word. It's there, third from
Love
last.
the pretentious word. Come on.
Anti-penultimate. It's beautiful. Two to go. I hope this is you. Have a good week. Although not too good a week as the opinion owners. And
Yeah,
we'll
very good.
speak to you very soon. Goodbye.